Okay, well, hopefully everyone can hear me. We'll go ahead and get started. Hello, and thank you for joining our Craig Rehab U webinar series. I'm Tracy Jensen with Craig Hospital's Provider Relations team, and I'll be your moderator today. As a bit of housekeeping related to continuing education credits, we will have 3 poll questions that'll be launched throughout the webinar. So be sure to answer all of the questions to receive credit. In all honesty, you really only need to answer 2 of the 3, but and you must attend at least 50 minutes of the presentation to receive credit. Credit is being provided from our partners at CEU Institute. So you'll be receiving an email directly from them after the webinar, actually a few days after the webinar, regarding your credits and any additional information that you might need to submit. Credit will go to those who have signed on with the email they registered for the presentation. If you're in a room with multiple people, everyone will need to sign on an individually to receive credit. So you can also get in touch with me and I can send you a group attendee form after the webinar, and you guys can fill that out and send it back to me. So providing our talk today is Craig Hospital's amazing behavior analyst supervisor, Arielle Reindeau. Ari is a board certified behavior analyst with over 10 years of experience implementing person-centered behavior analysis. Ari has served populations with special needs, developmental disabilities, and acquired brain injuries in school, residential, home, and hospital-based settings. Ari is the first BCBA ever to work full-time within a traumatic brain injury model system hospital. In her position as neurobehavior rehab supervisor at Craig, she leads a team of specialists who ensure maximum patient success and health outcomes with proven efficacy. Ari also provides hospital-wide education on behavior management and individualized protocols. She has IRB approval for her first publication, which compares individualized and standardized data systems to individualized data systems. In addition to her clinical duties, she has been involved in developing the overall neurobehavioral programming to include education opportunities for all individuals to help optimize patient, family, and community outcomes. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to submit a question in the chat or Q&A window, and we will do our best to answer them throughout the presentation or at the end if time permits. So without further ado, I will hand things over to Ari.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate it. Just want to check that I sound okay to everyone. So if you have any issues with sound, if you could type that into the chat now. I also just want to give you guys a visual, if you are not able to see me, of what I look like. I have fair skin. It is kind of an olive tone. I'm wearing black rimmed glasses. I have dark hair that is parted at the side and in a ponytail. I'm wearing a black top that has button ups and a little moonstone necklace that I wear pretty much every day. So we are going to get our webinar started, and I am very excited to work with you all today on how can we use behavior management for what we might consider lifelong happiness. So in the first part of my talk today, I'm actually going to ask for a little interaction. I know this is Zoom, but what I would like you to do is on your panel, you should be able to see a raise hand function. So if you could look for that raised hand function. Awesome. Great job, everybody. Not yet. Hold on. You're raising hands too quick. Cool. We all found it. And now we're taking them down. Okay. Good. All right. So I am going to start with some prompts, and I want you to raise those hands if those prompts kind of relate to you as a person. And we're going to start with your behavior first, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So for me, if you could please raise that virtual hand if you've ever felt lazy. You said, I want to work out, eat healthier, go outside, and then you spend your entire day on that couch. Yeah, look at all those hands going up. It's crazy. All right, let's go to the next one. And you only have to take your hand down if it doesn't apply to you. Let's keep those hands up if you've ever felt silly. You took a joke too far. You made fun of a loved one or goofed off too much when you knew you shouldn't. All those hands are going up. I love this. This is virtual hands. This is good. All right. What if you've ever felt bored? You left a meeting to go to the bathroom, but you really just spent the entire time sitting on your phone. Don't worry, your boss probably isn't on this webinar, so they won't know. So what we're talking about here are 3 different things. We're talking about the emotions, the way we feel, the thoughts, the way we think, and the behaviors, what we actually do. You guys can go ahead and put those virtual hands down. Thank you so much. And what we just saw there was a little bit of a disjointing. So we saw some emotions, some thoughts, and the behaviors didn't seem to line up. And I just want to illustrate this one more time because this is such an important part of what I'm going to teach you today. So you are angry. You are seething with anger. Your thought is, I am done with this crap. And your behavior is flipping through Instagram. Or you're really happy. You're thinking everything is going super well today. And your behavior is flipping through Instagram. Or you're really sad. You have a deep thought of, I cannot do this one more day. And your behavior is flipping through Instagram. So if behavior worked in line with emotions and thoughts, that third column should have 3 unique responses. What I am trying to illustrate here is the first principle I want you to learn, which is behavior does not work the same way our thoughts and our emotions work. The science that I'm going to teach you about today is really going to focus on what you do, not how you think or how you feel. We're really going to focus on the behaviors you engage in. And I hope by the end of today, you have a strong concept of what is a behavior from a behavior analysis scope. Now, I have a theory, and this is not research based. There is no evidence to support this, but I feel strongly about it. My theory is when your behaviors, your thoughts, and your emotions are all in a great pattern, that's when we experience happiness. We feel good, we think good thoughts, we do good things. We feel sad, we have sad thoughts, we engage in behaviors to help us with those sadnesses. So when we have kind of that trifecta of everything aligning, I think we experience happiness as humans. But if you think about how many hands we saw go up virtually in the beginning, it doesn't sound like a lot of us are experiencing that all the time. We have these hopes and these thoughts that we want to work out, get better. We want to go outside, but our behaviors don't always align. And that can cause a lot of distress and discomfort, both for us, but also for all the individuals that we work with. So my objectives for today, I'm going to teach you a couple different acronyms, and really they're initialisms if you are a grammatically correct person. So MORMAL is going to be our first initialism, and that's going to explain to us how does behavior work. Then we're going to analyze the ABCs of behavior from a behavior analytics scope. We'll talk about the acronym All Behavior Eats. And then finally, we'll have a little bit of a roadmap to what we might consider behavioral happiness. So let's start in the basics. Let's get into the weeds of this. First of all, you might think, well, I know what behavior is, and you probably do, you're right. But today we're really going to focus on the science of behavior analysis, which is the science of human behavior. I am a board certified behavior analyst. I have been in the field for just under 12 years now with my degree or with my board certification for the past 8. And really what I love about this field is I, sitting in this room, am maybe a reformed bad kid. So growing up, I had a lot of behaviors that were challenging to others. I interfered with the learning and functioning of myself and with others at a really high rate. So in learning this science, I learned about myself. I learned about why was I doing the things that I was doing? And it really allowed me to have a new perspective of how do I get the things that I want out of life in a way that's adaptive and in a way that helps me function as a person. So according to ABA, this is our most comprehensive definition of behavior. And I had to memorize this in grad school, which was really fun back in before there was Google and all those wonderful things to help us. So behavior was that portion of an organism's interaction with its environment that is characterized by detectable displacement in space through time of some part of that organism, and that results in a measurable change in at least one aspect of the environment. And that definition was given to us by Johnston and Pennypacker in 1993. So when I go to describe behavior to someone and I use that definition, they usually don't know what I'm talking about. So first thing we're going to do is talk about what is behavior. And behavior is very simply everything a person does. When we define behaviors, we're going to look for actions that are measurable, observable, relationship-based, movement-like, and only done by living organisms. This acronym is going to help us kind of guide this class and what we think of when we think about what behavior do I need to help this person with. We're going to go step by step into each of these categories, but if at any time you have a question or you'd like a little bit of clarification, feel free to type it into the chat and Tracy will stop me in my tracks. So let's start with measurable. Measurable is the ability to quantify this action. There are things that I can't measure. For example, someone being anxious. That's an internal state that they're feeling. I also can't measure someone having a thought. I can't see it, so there's no way for me to measure it. So when we talk about things that are measurable that might be related, we look at things like this. Walking. Maybe someone who is experiencing anxiety paces back and forth. That walking, I could measure. Maybe someone who's anxious eats. A little bit of compulsive eating. That's okay. That happens at times. I can measure that behavior. Or maybe someone whistles as they think. My grandfather does that. I love that. So I know when he's actively in his thought process. I don't know that he's thinking, but I know he's whistling. So I could measure those things on the left-hand column. Those things on the right-hand column, I would really have to interpret. And that's what we're going to try not to do moving forward. When we look at behavior, we want to look at the objective thing that we can measure, not what we think it means. When we look for something to be observable, you got to be able to see it. I cannot see someone who is hungry. I also cannot see someone who is experiencing agitation. Here are things I can observe. Opening the cupboards, right? My wonderful boyfriend opens the fridge about 20 times a night. I don't know what he's doing. I think he's hungry, but that's me interpreting why he keeps opening the fridge. When we think about things like agitation, many of us have used this clinically for years and years and years, and this is no shame and no blame to us. We used the tools that we had given. But I want you to think about the last time someone said to you, well, he or she is agitated. What did that mean to you? Did you know what they were talking about? Or did you interpret it in your mind? You likely interpreted it, and that's okay. That's part of what your brain is supposed to do. But if we look for what's actually observable, I don't know it's agitation, but I can observe yelling. I don't know that it's agitation, but I can observe cuss words. So we're really going to look at the actions, okay? We're going to stop trying to interpret what's going on. When we talk about something being relationship-based, this is always a funny one because as I work with people who are coming into my field, they say a relationship with who? It's with your environment, right? We are all tied down to the space we are in. Uniquely for this webinar, I am in a room that is not my own. This is someone else's office. So in this environment, I'm having a relationship. Tracy can tell you, I couldn't get my speaker to work over there, but it happened here. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about the relationship-based part of behavior. It can't happen within a vacuum. Something like getting well doesn't have to have an environment tied to it. Similarly, with that feeling of a lack of purpose, it doesn't have to happen anywhere. It could happen just in your mind or in that vacuum. But here are some things that can't happen in a vacuum. Wiping your nose. That's something I can measure, I could observe, and maybe we could correlate it with you improving in your health. Flushing the toilet. If you're having GI issues, that could be something that I see, I measure, I observe, and that's relationship-based. It's happening within your environment. Or something like reading the want ads. So reading is one of those hard behaviors because right now I'm going to show you reading. It looks like I'm reading my phone, right? Really, my phone's dark. I'm not doing anything. So reading is a behavior that you can only check based on the permanent product of it, which is that comprehension of language. But I can observe someone visually scanning the wanted ads. When we talk about movement like, this is movement that results in displacement. I hope all of you had a wonderful physics teacher. In the back of my slide, I actually have a big tub, and they are doing the good old displacement physics demonstration where they put something in a full tub of water and the water displaces over the tub. Basically what happens is that action has a consequence. That's what we mean when we say movement like. Not that it is actual movement, because you'll see some behaviors don't involve them moving at all, but that it results in some change. So Actions without a consequence, being upset. Now, I hear my mother in my head already. Oh, there's a consequence when I'm upset, Arielle. And there is, but it's not that she's upset, right? It's the behavior she engages in that actually becomes my consequence. Another action that might not have a consequence is wishing for change. I can have this wish, I can have this hope, but there could be no consequence for me having that actual intention. So when we look for actions with consequences, I can see someone stomp their feet. Now, I can interpret that as they are upset. But when we look to analyze a behavior, we look to take away those variables. I just want to measure the stomping of the feet. Someone who's wishing for change might start to actually engage in some behaviors that we could then measure, like writing letters to a .gov address or verbally complaining about the state of the politics. So these things have consequences to them. And finally, the action can be done by a living organism. So some actions can be done by anything. Getting dirty. My car gets dirty, my computer gets dirty, my coffee cup gets dirty. Hoping. Now, this is interesting because I often think of people say, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. Only people can hope. But we often attribute hope to lots of different things. We talk about groups hoping. We talk about the hope for the future. These are actions that don't actually have to be done just by a person. So when we talk about an action by an animal, we're talking about the rolling in the dirt. Yes, the consequence is they are now dirty, but the behavior we saw was that beautiful little disinhibited roll in hopefully just dirt. We think about things like rubbing deodorant on. Okay, so I can observe that. I can measure that. That can only be done by a living organism. Or writing a wish list. So I'm hoping through all of these steps, you've gotten a good understanding of what is a behavior and what is not. If you're still having some trouble, there is a test, and it is called the Dead Man Test. It was made by Mallet et al. In 2004. One of my favorite things about this test is it has the word ain't in it. If a dead man can do it, it ain't behavior. And if a dead man can't do it, then it is behavior. That's a really nice way to think about it. A dead man could get dirty. A dead man could hope. A dead man could not roll in dirt or rub deodorant on or write a wish list. So we're really establishing the basics of what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about this level of behavior, something that is measurable, observable, relationship-based, movement-like, and done by living organisms. Okay, Tracy, do they have the ability to unmute?
No, everyone is muted.
Okay. So we're going to have to type into the chat, and maybe what we'll do is if you think, or let's do hands again. That worked well the first time. So if you think it is a behavior, I want you to raise that virtual hand. If you think it's not a behavior, leave those hands down. So I'm going to bring something up onto the screen. I'll count to 3, and then only raise your hand if you think it is a behavior. Being anxious. 1, 2, 3. I'm seeing hands go up and hands go down. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. And Tracy, if you could help kind of guide the chat. Amanda Davis, I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you're the first name that I see. Let's talk a little bit about why this is or is not a behavior. Amanda, could you quickly type into the chat what I would see when I see being anxious?
Don't see any response.
Okay, we're going to move on because I don't want to kill too much time. But being anxious is not a behavior. Part of this is because I can't view your anxiety. Now you're going to say, but I know when someone is anxious. What are you seeing? You're seeing them bite their nails. You're seeing them maybe look away, maybe try to get out of the room quickly. So those are all the behaviors. Being anxious is a feeling state. So we do not consider that one a behavior. All right, let's try another one.
Hey, Ari, sorry, the chat was, I guess the chat's disabled. So Amanda did answer. So she has different actions by the anxious person, just so you know. So they can answer in the Q&A.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. So yeah, there are different actions, but those actions are the behavior. Being anxious is not the behavior. All right. What about waving hello? Is that a behavior? Yes. Love all those hands going up. Everybody's like, yep, I can see it. I can observe it. I can count it. All those things make it a behavior. All right, everybody. Agitated. Is this a behavior? So let's think. Can you see agitation? If it is truly a behavior, you should be able to see it on every single person that's in this chat. So we cannot observe agitation. We observe behaviors that we then attribute to someone being agitated. Agitation or being agitated, similar to being anxious, they are not measurable and they are not observable behaviors. We might say we're looking for a behavior that often occurs when this person tells us they're feeling upset. We're still measuring that behavior they tell us about, not their feeling of being upset. All right, what about getting wet? And don't forget your dead man test. If a dead man can do it, it ain't behavior. Yeah, I see all those hands going down. Right, so this doesn't pass the dead man test. A dead man can absolutely get wet. So this is not something that we would consider a behavior. And then finally, snoring. Yeah, all the hands are going back up. Perfect. So snoring is something I can see, I can observe. That makes it a behavior. Nice job, everybody. Appreciate you interacting with me. So we are on to poll question number 1. Based on the science of applied behavior analysis, all behavior is A, measurable and observable, B, relationship-based or done within a context, C, movement-like or results in displacement, D, done by living organisms, or E, all of the above.
So I'm going to go ahead and launch the poll that for that first question. And you can answer on the screen.
Perfect.
Can you see that poll?
I do see it.
Okay.
Oh, yep, I see it.
There we go.
It looks like people are answering number 2, though. So you should only answer number 1 so far.
Oh,
please.
yeah. I don't know why they all launched together. Sorry about that.
No problem.
I'm obviously challenged today.
We got it. We'll figure it out.
It's making them answer all of it that people are saying.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, y'all. I thought I did
So
3
is there
separate
no way
questions.
for us to wait? Or could we launch it at the end then maybe, Tracy?
Sure. Let's
Okay. We're going to end the poll and we're going to launch it at the end so you see all the material before you have to answer the questions. All right. Tracy, I do have the answers in my slide, but I'm going to click through real fast. Bam. You didn't even see it. See? All right. Let's get into the bulk of what we're going to talk about today, which are the ABCs of behavior. We just learned about behavior, which is what the organism does, and we got that acronym of MORMAL, which stands for measurement. I was like, now I can't remember what it is. We need it to be measurable. We need it to be observable. We need it to be relationship-based, movement-like, that it results in a consequence or displacement, and done by living organisms. And I want to be clear that I did not create this science. Skinner is really the father of applied behavioral analysis, and he started his research in the late 40s, and by the early 50s had really created the science that I now study and am bringing to all of you. So now we're going to dive into the antecedents, which are what occur before the behavior, and also the consequences, which are what occur after the behavior. So here we go. Here's a big take-home point for everybody. There is a 3-term contingency. There is one thing you cannot control, and that is the behavior of others. You can control the antecedents and the consequences. So we're going to work a lot today to look at how does this work in any kind of clinical setting, in my own personal life, in my dog's life, because she's all over this PowerPoint. So let's start with the antecedents, things that occur before the behavior. If you wanted to give yourself, what does this really mean? You might ask yourself questions like, where am I? What time is it? Who's present as I engage in this behavior? Those questions will help you identify the antecedents to your behavior. And today, I'm going to show you how your environment is this beautiful thing that learned how to control you. So, the environment is an antecedent that promotes something called situational specificity. Situational specificity is the phenomenon where the context you are in shifts your behavior. And I'm going to give you some examples. We're going to take a little walk in our brains together. All right, here's our first stop. We're at the library. Awesome. I love the library. I am a huge book person. I'm trashy romance. If you have any good ones, throw them in the chat for me at the end. So when in the library, I already know my voice is too loud. I can hear it. I can already hear my school librarian yelling at me. Okay, so my voice has to turn down. I need to be at a conversational level. Reading is appropriate.
Okay, it looks like we might have lost Ari. I don't know if you guys can still hear me. Okay. I'm really sorry for the technical difficulties we're having today. The joy of technology. Ari should be able to hop on here shortly. Okay. Grab the popcorn. I love it. Sorry, you guys. I think she's getting back on. But in the meantime, I did figure out the poll situation. So I could launch the first question while we're waiting for her to get back on if you'd like. So hopefully those can be answered. There we go. There comes Ari.
Sorry about that, family. My internet.
Lost you.
Yeah.
I figured out the poll question, so I went ahead and launched the poll again while we were
Perfect. Awesome. Sorry about that, guys.
So we had everyone answer, majority of everyone answered all of the above.
Okay, perfect. And that was the right answer, all of the above.
Excellent.
So, sorry, we tripped. I tripped probably. I'm very clumsy. We're in the hospital. A person comes to me with a clipboard and says, hey, can you please tell me your age, your date of birth, how tall you are, how much you weigh, your background, if you have any medical conditions? Would I have answered any of these questions at the library or at the restaurant? Absolutely not. My environment decided, okay, you can tell this person this information just by being in that hospital setting. Let's keep walking. We got a long block to go down. My favorite setting, the classroom. Think about what we have done to our human species through our educational system. I was a preschool teacher for a long time. So one of my favorite things was I had a big rug, and on the rug we had 3 centers, and you always had toys at a center. We had a cozy corner for reading, but one thing we did not have were desks. We didn't have that level of organization at the preschool level. And we don't typically see it in kindergarten, but you hit 1st grade and all of a sudden the room starts to look like this. The expectations of that room start to shift. We learn how to sit, to pay attention, and to keep our hands quiet so that we are able to engage within our education. But I didn't have to do that at the library, and I didn't have to do that at a restaurant, and I don't have to do that at a hospital. Now, many of us have been conditioned to this typical school setting, and I love it because I teach adults now, which is a big fun change because you can go to the bathroom without having to bring the whole class, which, whew, praise on that one. So all of a sudden, I have these people. Maybe they know me, maybe they don't, but they're all sitting and their hands are folded and they are watching me as I teach. And I think your 1st grade teacher did a great job. All right, we take one more walk. Here's the scary part. We're at the club. Now, I'm not sure who made this environment, but this environment has very little rules. All of a sudden, there are things you wouldn't ever do anywhere else that you're doing. If you are a big dancer like my abuelita, you're slapping that floor. My grandmother would never slap the floor anywhere else. So all of a sudden, the environment decides what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And that is situational specificity. So when we talk about antecedents, they can promote behavior. Go, eat, text, play, or they can inhibit behavior. It's not available. It's out of order. I am not going to say good morning to you because you don't look like you want to say good morning back to me. So all of these things, these signals tell our brain what should we do and what should we not do. Your behaviors often are a result of your environment. Another good illustration of this can be seen on the next slide. Think about your personal response to some of these people. The other day, a telemarketer called my good friend and she picked up and said, hello, this is the operator for 911. And that person hung up so quick. And I said, wow, where did you think of that? And she said, I just hate when they call me. So I want them to feel uncomfortable too, since I'm uncomfortable. Your mom and your dad might evoke different behavioral responses with you. A dog might be something you love or something that you are absolutely 2 feet away from. Someone saying hello could lead to you saying hello back, and someone telling you no might trigger a good response. Okay, I hear you, no big problem. Or it might be like, absolutely not. I am doing that right now, whether you tell me yes or no. So you can see how different antecedents lead to different behaviors. Now, it's important when we go back to behaviors, which you all have a good understanding of, and we've got that good foundation, that we start to talk a little bit more about how do we make sure we're talking about the same thing. Part of that is really going to be through your operational definition. Bear-Wolf and Risley in their 1968 paper, which is seminal to our field, really talked about operational definitions being a foundation for what we study. Because if my definition can't be seen and understood by all of you, we're all going to take data. We're all going to interpret the behavior in a different way. We want to make sure we have one way that we see this activity. So let's look at an operational definition. It's going to have 4 major characteristics. All the observable characteristics will be defined. It should be readable and unambiguous. It should be complete, delineating all boundaries of when the behavior starts, stops. And a really important part of this definition is it has to be repeatable. So I took some behaviors that I think we all do. Inappropriate texting may include sending any messages from my phone during work meetings or patient treatments. Messages with critical safety information or needs are not a part of this definition. Messages can be sent via touching phone, my Siri voice app, or my Apple Watch. So this definition gives you a really clear picture of when would we consider this inappropriate and when would we not consider this inappropriate. Spending money on non-essentials, another thing I think a lot of us do. This might include any instance of purchasing an item that is not an essential, defined as food, clothing, shelter, water. Purchases may be between 1 cent and $1 million. Purchases can be made via online shopping, credit card swipes, personal checks, or cash. So I am delineating every single part of spending money on non-essentials. And when I go to collect data on this behavior, this is where these definitions really become what we need. Finally, something I hope we are not all still engaging in, tantrums. This may include, and I want to be clear, I know Tracy, pretty well, we work together. I don't think Tracy's tantrum would match my tantrum. So when I go to define tantrum, I'm defining a tantrum for that individual. We're never doing an operational definition for a group. It's always for that one person and that one behavior. Now, multiple different actions could be within this defined topography, but we want to make sure that as we talk about the behavior itself, tantrum, the definition is clear and shows me what this really means. In this instance, tantrums include any instance of verbal insults or complaints about another person's performance, paired with increased volume above conversational level. Tantrums often occur after denial of access, transition in plans, or moments of divided attention. Tantrums begin when an insult or complaint of performance presents with increased volume. Tantrums end when no increased volume has been present for at least 30 seconds. So if I brought you and said, be a fly on my wall, take data on how often I tantrum. I'm going to hope it's 0. We're going to hope we got past that point in my life, but who knows? If it's not 0, you can now give me data of when it's happening. You can also give me data of what happened before I saw this behavior. So think about it. You can say, well, Ari, I've been observing you for many weeks. It seems like Thursdays and Fridays are your most likely days to have tantrums. All right, let's think about what's Thursday and Friday for all of us. You guys are at an 11 o'clock webinar. I'm teaching an 11 o'clock webinar. So that stress that builds up throughout the week might be part of why I experience these behaviors later on in the week. We can now look at the time of day. We can now look at the people present in the room when I do these things, and knowing my antecedents can help me treat my behavior. So why do we want better definitions? You say, Ari, I know what I'm talking about. But better definitions are going to guide you to better data. And better data is a key to managing your own behavior. Data collection allows us to see the impact as we change antecedents and consequences. I hope everyone on this webinar has had an opportunity in life to try to teach themselves something. Maybe you went for a language. I went for skiing. I'm not a skier, I'll just tell you that. Maybe you went for an instrument. What else do I hear adults do? The workouts, right? I tried to learn a new type of workout. How well did you do? Did you see success? How did you measure your success? And if you were unable to learn the skill, do you have data that supports why you were unable to learn that skill? That can really change your life, and it can change your perspective. Now, I've talked a lot about our own personal behavior, but let's go clinical for a second. I walk into a room. Patient looks at me, gives me this glare, and says, if you don't walk out of here, I'm going to punch you. Okay. However I decide to respond to that behavior, I'm going to write that down. The next day, maybe I knock before I go in, and I see if I get the same behavior. I'm changing an antecedent now, and I'm going to take my data. I still get it. Maybe the next day, I take away the knock as it did not seem to be effective, and I walk in the room, and instead of greeting the patient, I open the lights and I wait until the patient greets me. And maybe that is what is successful. But if I don't have data, I have no way to see that the things that I am changing are impacting the behaviors I'm looking for. And I think clinically, working on the teams that we work on, working at the level of care that we work at, it is so important that we're all talking about the same behaviors and the same kind of data collection. Poll question number 2. Based on the science of ABA, antecedents can A, increase or decrease the chance of us engaging in a behavior, B, stop us from doing anything, C, serve as the function of behavior, or D, none of the above?
Launching now.
Thank you, Tracy.
Mhm. We're about 90% in already, or
Doing
50%.
great.
And by the way, there are some book recommendations for you in the Q&A, so we'll definitely
I'm so
mention
excited.
those at
Thank
the
you.
end. Yeah. About 80% in. Someone did ask, they were curious why you said a dead man can hope.
So hope is one of those things, because it's not measurable or observable. I could say, well, my grandpa hoped that this would happen, or my grandpa hopes, knowing that my grandpa has passed away, I can still use those verbs to describe what I think about how he felt about something, but it is not observable or measurable.
Uh-huh. Okay, I think I'll go ahead and close the poll question.
Beautiful. And it looks like we did pretty well. The correct answer was A. Antecedents can increase or decrease the chance of us engaging in a behavior. The easiest way that I could think of this is the out of order sign. That antecedent tells me what I can do and what I can't do for the machine that I'm looking at. Now we're going to talk a little bit about that final part of the puzzle, the consequences of behavior. And it is amazing to me that, brain injury rehab has really been established since the 1950s. But until the most recent kind of decade, we haven't been looking at behavior as needing an expert, needing someone to help guide the clinical process of how do I deal with or manage these behaviors. So often I have been in settings where they say, well, here's how we de-escalate. We do these things. How does it work for absolutely everyone? And they say, well, it works for some people, it doesn't work for others. Yeah, that's because some people's behaviors functions in a certain way and other people's does not. So when we talk about consequences of behavior, again, we're going to talk at that individual level. And we're going to go pretty deep into this because this is, if you take it home, I hope to change your life with it. So the consequences of behavior. A consequence can reinforce or punish. This is operant behavior, okay? So when we talk about operant behavior, we're talking about a behavior that has antecedent behavior consequence. And that consequence changes the rate of behavior. Reinforcement is when the rate increases over time. Punishment is when the rate decreases over time. If I could go back to the 1950s, I would sit B.F. Skinner down and I would say, yeah, let's talk about that punishment word. Can we not use that? Because it doesn't sound very good. But I want to be clear. We are not talking about spanking or scolding or using any type of corporal punishment. We are talking about the effect it has on the behavior. Punishment will always decrease behavior. Reinforcement will always increase behavior. So I've got my friend Sally. I am a supervisor. It is difficult. And I have behaviors that I have to work with my staff on. So, Sally, we're working on getting to work on time. And we know that this can be challenging for certain people. So, I want to make sure if Sally gets to work on time that I reinforce that behavior. I provide her with a consequence that is more likely to increase her arriving on time. I can do that by adding something to the environment. I know that Sally loves to sit down and have a cup of coffee when she first gets in. When she's on time, I make it so that I can sit down and have that coffee with her. Or maybe I know Sally's not a fan of Toby. So when Sally's at work on time, I say, oh, you know what, Sally? Toby's going to do this project. You can do this project. And I give her a consequence that she prefers. Or maybe Sally's late one day. And I want to be clear, punishing someone does not mean that you're shaming or blaming them. Behavior is behavior, and that's what I want you to walk away with today. So if someone's late, it's not you're a bad person. It's not that you don't care about your job. It's that the environment has not given you consequences to successfully decrease or punish this behavior. So Sally walks in, she's late, and I say, oh, Sally, we're working with Toby today. Sally's like, okay. Or maybe I say, Oh, you know what, Sally? We actually don't have time for coffee this morning. I'm sorry, we got to get right to this thing. So I'm trying to change the consequence that this person experiences to change the future rate of that behavior. Sorry. Consequences are going to change the future likelihood under similar antecedent conditions. So if you give someone the consequence of maybe saying hi to them when they say hi back, the next time they see you, or they're in a similar setting, they're more likely to greet you again because that gave them a consequence they liked. Maybe they went up to you at a bad time though, and you did one of those hi and just turned away. The next time they see you in the hallway, they might choose not to greet you based on that kind of dismissive wave they got in the look away. So at the end of the day, all behavior eats. I love food. So you're going to see a lot of food on the next slides. It's just so that you keep remembering this acronym. All behavior eats. And eats stands for the following: escape, attention, tangible, or sensory. These 4 functions have been identified over time to be the maintaining consequences, the things that we as humans are trying to get out of our environment. Now, we're going to go into depth. So I hope that by the end, you have a good concept of all 4 of these. But if right now you're looking and saying, no, I have behaviors that don't result in those, we're going to keep going. And I want you to see if you still feel that way at the end. So repeated consequences, it's not just a one-off, is what can reinforce and maintain that behavior. In the ABA world, we call those the functions of the behavior. Iwata, in his 1994 functional analysis on self-injurious behavior, really starts to coin that term and solidify what it means for our science. Since then, this is one of the key things that makes me different than any other behavior management person you may have met before. I am looking for this function, I am looking for those antecedents, and I'm determining my interventions based on those 2 things. All right, we first go to the E, escape. This is also known as avoidance in literature. I wanted to give you both so that you have a good understanding if you want to go out and research on your own. So we've got our ABC frame that you all know so well now. In the antecedent column, there's always going to be some kind of aversive stimulus. The behavior will occur in the behavior column, and then the consequence is always going to be that we either avoid or escape that antecedent. Let's look at my dog. Her name is Pepper. My Pepper, she's had to take a lot of pills lately. We had some bladder issues. So I try to hide them. I do a very good job. She spits them out. I pick them up and I huff. Now, in the long run, eventually I'm going to get that pill down so that my dog gets her medicine. But even just that little bit of avoidance or that little bit of escape can maintain someone. So now think about your clinical world. You get someone to PT. Oh, I really have to pee, actually. Could we go back to my room? They don't escape the whole hour of PT, but they get out of a good 10 minutes. That could maintain their behavior moving forward, that 10 minutes of avoidance or escape. So let's go into a couple more examples. An unfamiliar person holds a baby. That baby cries. That unfamiliar person goes, here, mom. That baby has escaped or avoided that unfamiliarity, that aversive stimulus they saw in the antecedent. It's time to wake up for school. My parents of teenagers, thank you for doing the hard work. Your teenager continues to lay in bed like a log. And you, as that busy parent who's got to get their coffee and their food and their things done for that day, says, you have 2 more minutes, seriously, and walks away. Those 2 minutes, that's escape and avoidance for 2 solid minutes. That can maintain that behavior of laying in bed like a log. My brothers did that. I was blessed that way. Okay, you're the caregiver, and you say, hey, I need you to help me with this. I hear you, but I need to take this phone call. And the caregiver goes, well, I don't have time to wait. I'm going to do it alone. If that keeps happening, it is the escape and the avoidance of the task that is maintaining those phone calls. Isn't that so cool to think about? So now go into your own brain. Maybe it's the gym. And every time you say you're going to drive to the gym, you escape and avoid it. Maybe it's meetings. Every time you know I've got a 2-hour meeting, you show up 5 minutes late. There is something that you have learned through your environment to do, and it is being maintained because you keep meeting this consequence of escape. Let's go to attention. Now, one of the things that I really struggle with is at times there is a bad spotlight put on attention, and people are called attention seekers. Well, guess what? You are all attention seekers. I am an attention seeker. It is part of being a human. We want attention. That's okay. This is something that maintains your behavior. Now, it would be very funny for you to come and sit in a room with me because you would get a very different perception of who I am. I like attention like this, where I am in control, where I get to decide what we talk about. If you were in charge of this, you might see a very different behavior from me because that's not the type of attention I'm looking for. So in attention, the only thing that has to be present in the antecedent column is somebody else. The behavior occurs, and the consequences that attention is given by those others that are present. So I sit on my couch, and I am so happy to be on my couch because I work hard and I am tired, and my dog is so cute, and she barks, and she grabs her toy. And I say, "You silly little lady," and I play with her because she's so cute. But she has learned to get my attention. She has also learned to wait until I sit down, which we'll talk about another time. So when we talk about attention, the dad leaves the room, the baby cries, dad re-enters and goes, "Are you okay?" Because think about it, those cries sometimes can be these curdling screams where we're worried that this child is hurt. But that second of daddy just peeking back in is that little bit of attention I might need. The parents on the phone. My poor mother had 6 children, so every time I bring her up, please just praise her. Teenager begins to poke their parent. They hiss, "No, I'm on the phone." But you just talked to me, and that's all I needed. That's that little bit of attention I was looking for. You arrive at the gym. You wave at your friend and you say, "Hey, how are you?" And they start to talk to you. So you're getting attention now just by entering a new environment with people that you know. We all look for attention in our own ways. And I actually think attention is really adaptive, right? It's good to be able to know when you like to be around people and when you don't. Now we head into tangibles. The A is that something is present. Your behavior occurs, and your consequence is the delivery of that item. I'm home from work. My dog is super smart. She goes right up to her bowl and slaps it and looks at me. And I give her dinner because I'm like, "Well, you just told me what you wanted. Why wouldn't I not give you dinner, right? You're requesting, give me some food." Absolutely, doggo. The baby hears their favorite song on the iPhone. I actually saw this happening in the airport in Atlanta, and I was just giggling to myself. And the baby starts doing this, which is amazing because grabbing is really the only thing that kid can do at this age. And the parent gives access to that phone. And you have this cute little baby holding a phone in the airport. Mom and dad just got paid. Your teenager is aware of your paycheck, I'm sure, and they say, "Hey, can I have $5?" And they deliver that money. You're driving to work. You stop at Starbucks and you get some breakfast. You get some coffee and some breakfast delivered to you. So we do a lot in our world to get access to different types of items. Money is one of those tangibles that I always laugh about because people will do a lot to access that tangible. And when you think about it, money is a little different than everything else. Because if I have a phone, I just have a phone. If I have coffee, I just have coffee. But if I have money, I could have a lot of different things. So finally, sensory, our final condition, anything could be present in the antecedents. The behavior occurs, and the way that we know a sensory function is occurring is we don't observe any changes. My dog is home. My dog rubs her butt on the carpet. Now, this is just a joke. I'm sad. That's not the consequence. The actual consequence is my dog is receiving sensory input to her anal glands, and that does feel good for her. So when we think about the sensory function, think about all the things we do that we say, "Why am I doing this?" It feels good to pick your skin. It feels good to pick your nose. It feels good to pick your hair. That sensory input, you are sensory seeking in some ways. So the babies in the crib, they start picking at their nose. The nose reddens, but really it's all that input they're getting that maintains the behavior. There is a pimple on your face. You picked it. Now, we see the reddening of the site, we see those little acne marks, but really there's a huge sensory experience that happens internally that no one can observe. And finally, all the buttons in your life. Think about all the buttons you have around you right now. Those buttons lead to cause and effect. Often that can be some sensory, right? Have you ever been on your phone and you don't even know what you're doing on it, but you just keep touching it? You are sensory seeking some kind of input. All right, so we're going to play a game again. Tracy, if you could go into the Q&A, and we'll just go with whoever answers first. If you could either type escape, attention, tangible, or sensory after this example. So a visitor walks in. Hello. And the visitor smiles. Is the consequence an example of escape, attention, tangible, or sensory? And you can type your answer into the Q&A. And Tracy will read it to me because I don't have it up. Sorry, Tracy.
No problem. See a lot of attention.
Yeah, good job, guys. That's right.
Mostly all
Visitors
attention.
smiling is attention. Yeah. A smile, just someone looking at you is attention. So when we think clinically about how we give attention to patients, remember, you are a stimulus that can give attention. I can give you direct attention, happy attention. I can also be very neutral. So I can change myself for different types of attention.
There is a question in here too, Ari, it's a little bit off where you're at now, but
No problem.
asking for further clarification or for you to define operant behavior again.
Absolutely, we can go over operant behavior again. So operant behavior is behavior that is changed based on conditioning. It's different than reflexive behavior, which occurs just due to the stimulus. So if somebody blows air into your eye, you're going to blink, and that's a reflex. Operant behavior would be more similar to something that can be conditioned over time. So maybe crying to a sad song that you associate with your mother, that would be an operant behavior. A reflexive behavior would be something where sun in your eye, you close those eyelids. Just the environment controls reflexive behavior, consequences control operant behavior. Thank you for asking. All right, you've got red skin, you itch it. Don't do that. You get a scratch mark on your skin. Is this escape, attention, tangible, or sensory?
Seeing a lot of sensory.
Got it. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
And finally, you're at the store, you stand in line, and they give you a physical ticket. Is this escape, attention, tangible, or sensory?
Everybody's listening. We got some tangibles on here.
That's right. Yeah, good job, guys. Tangible. That's right. You got that ticket. So our final poll for the day is all behavior. Oops, sorry. Sings, sleeps, eats, or live.
We just launched that.
And think about the acronym you just learned. That's what we're talking about.
Got about 75% in.
All right. I'm going to keep going while you guys have that poll up. So at the end of this, our goal is really to understand that ABA is a science that can help us understand the laws of human behavior, and behavior, again, being everything a person does. The ABCs of behavior, you've got your antecedent, where your environment creates situational specificity, and then what is in that environment can promote or inhibit behavior. All behaviors will follow that beautiful acronym of normal. And then your consequences are either going to reinforce or punish the future likelihood of that behavior. Oh. So all behavior, the answer was eats. And let's talk about this road to behavioral happiness. First, one of the first parts you'll have to do is identify moments of stress. where behaviors, thoughts, and emotions are not aligning. If you're clinically working with individuals with brain injury, we typically will see them say things like, yes, I want to get better, but I don't want to go to physical therapy. Yes, I want to leave here, but I don't want to follow your recommendations to do so. Figure out where this misalignment is first. Then define the behavior that's interfering with that learning and functioning. Is it just a refusal, where when the PT walks in, they say, nope, not doing that? Or are they saying, oh, actually, I need to call someone real quick? Or are they sitting there and having a nice 15-minute chat with the PT before they allow them to place a demand? What is happening that is interfering with getting that clinical need met? Collect your data. You have to define that behavior, so now you can collect data on it. Figure out when it's happening. Figure out why, those consequences. What is it meaning? And I will tell you, one of the things I love about ABC data is people will say, well, he does it for attention. But when you take that data, you see every single time he escapes, or every single time we give him a phone. And all of a sudden, this thing that we thought we knew about this person becomes really clearly something different. You should always plan to change your environment and your antecedents for this behavior. And remember, simplicity is a great part of being a clinician. Change one thing at a time. Maybe first we change the time of day to change that antecedent. Maybe then we change who's present in the room. And then maybe if neither of those things work, we start to look at those consequences in a new light. Finally, I would love for you to meet with the BCBA for recommendations. We are board certified in behavior analysis for a reason. I dedicated my life to this science for a reason. It is not something that I think you can learn from a weekend course. It is not something that I think that psychologists, neuropsychologists, clinical case managers have been thoroughly trained in. So it's very important that you find someone who has their expertise on this road to behavioral happiness. This is my lovely team. I work with two other BCBAs, and we have 8 wonderful registered behavior technicians. My team helps promote behavioral happiness for our whole hospital. And I hope through the talk today, you gain some insight on how you might be able to look at behavior a little differently to hopefully manage it a little more happily. And Tracy, that is it for me.
Thank you so much, Ari. Really appreciate it. And I do have your book recommendations that I'll send over to you. Thank you everyone for joining us. As I did mention earlier, credit is being provided from CEU Institute. So you'll be receiving an email directly from them regarding your credits. That will most likely be sent to you next week. It does take a couple of days to get everything to them and for them to process. So I would give it at least a week to see that from them. You will also receive a separate email from us at Craig that will also have a survey that we'd love to hear back from you about how wonderful Ari is, and also for any suggestions you might have for future webinars. And that email will also have the handout, slides, and a recording of this webinar. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out. And we hope to see you at our next webinar next year in 2024. Thank you. Thanks, Ari.
Thanks, Tracy. If anyone wants my personal email, I will write it into the Q&A. You can feel free to reach out to me. I am always happy to talk about what I do and all the wonderful people I get to work with.
And I can put that in the follow-up email too, if you're.
That would be perfect. Actually, Trace, let's do that.